Hi there, my name is Lino. I'm chef at Sabor Restaurant, where we're at right now. So I'm going to be cooking with you. We're going to be doing a two-course dinner. We're going to have an appetizer of some mussels and white wine. We'll have a main course consisting of some lobster risotto with a nice seared piece of sable fish. I chose seafood. I chose a risotto because it's one of my favorite dishes. I grew up on the coast of northern Portugal for many years and then returned for another 13 years. Had a restaurant there, learned how to cook the dishes that I grew up eating. So you got your chef's kit in front of you for chef's table living. We're gonna take that and we're gonna make your meal. So let's go into the kitchen right now. Hey guys, welcome to my kitchen. All right, we're gonna start off with risotto. So risotto is this dish that is feared by many cooks as being very complicated. It's not easy. It's a process that does take a bit of time. So I'm going to start you off with a pre-cooking of the risotto, so that way you can impress your spouse or your guests when they arrive in putting it at the table in less than 10 minutes. So it's a 25-minute dish, but I'm going to show you how to make it real quick. To start off the risotto, we grab ourselves a little bit of olive oil, looking at roughly 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Okay, we've got some diced onions. Again, a couple of tablespoons of diced onions. Some garlic, maybe a teaspoon of garlic. Not maybe, I mean it depends how much garlic you like. Personally, I like a lot of garlic. I'm using a large pan or skillet because you want surface. The reason for the surface is you're going to be popping the rice in there. So the rice we're using is arborio, and arborio is known for its starchiness and the creaminess that comes out of it, and that's why it's used in this dish. So I'm using a frying pan, but you can use a small pot, maybe if you feel safer, so things don't jump out at you. Make sure that you don't burn your onions or garlic, but you want to get a bit of color in it. So we have achieved a little bit of color already, the color that probably you want, which is enough to bring out the sweetness in both the garlic and the onions. I'm going to throw in a little bit of white wine. What the white wine does, besides the flavor, it'll give it a balance. The bit of acidity that is in the wine will give it a balance when you get this creamy, rich dish. A little bit of sea salt, white pepper. I prefer white pepper in this dish. There's no grittiness, and the flavor actually complements it better than the black pepper. So a couple of bay leaves. Why the bay leaves? Because it will bring another depth of flavor to your food. It's going to give it a certain herb and earthiness to it. So, okay, now we've got this. This is what your pan should look like. We're going to take about a cup of the arborio rice now. So pretty much that will be a cup. A cup will give you 2 portions, so you can feed 2 people with a cup of rice. Now the trick to this is you're going to have to stay and watch your pan and keep stirring it so you don't get it sticking to the pan, you don't get it burning. So right now what I'm doing is coating the rice with the oil and the mix. So the coating of the rice will actually keep it from breaking while you're cooking it. We're going to start off with about 8 ounces of water. So 2 ladles or 4-ounce ladles. So the hot water will shock it and it will cook it evenly through. So the process of making this now is that you have to keep stirring it so it doesn't stick, and you have to keep adding water. We're going to add about 8 ladles, 4-ounce ladles for the 1 cup of rice. If you add the water all at once, you're going to boil the rice. You're not making risotto anymore, you're making pilaf. So by adding the water a bit at a time, you're getting the starch to come out of the rice, but you're keeping the rice always with that nice firmness. All right, so we keep doing this. This is going to take you about 15 minutes. The whole process from beginning to end will take you about 25. So these 15 minutes is the shortcut that you can do before you make dinner for your guests or for your spouse. We're going to add another couple ladles. So like I said, we're adding about 8 ladles of water. By the time you add the 8th one for that cup of rice, it should be ready, not cooked to eat, but ready to put aside to later on finish. I'm just going to grab a little flat pan. Once you spread it out, you actually stop it from cooking more. It cools off real quick, and you don't want to keep cooking it because you don't want to go back to it and have this overcooked rice. right, put the last 2 ladles. Okay, just let it sit for a minute. Give the broth a little taste, just to make sure that maybe a little dab more salt. But this depends on you though. Okay, so the rice is a bit crunchy, but it's a good crunch. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to spread it out on the sheet, because I don't want to keep cooking it. I don't want it to be overcooked, because what happens if you overcook it now, later you have to bring it back up to heat, and then it will be mushy. You don't want mushy. I'm going to put this in our fridge, let it cool down, and then we're going to go on to the next step. All right, so now we're going to do the mussels. The mussel, which is the appetizer. So we've got all the ingredients from your kit that you're going to need for your mussels. We've got olive oil, white wine, parsley, some sea salt, chilies, garlic, onions, and our mussels. We're going to make a very light, easy Mediterranean style sauce. So we're going to start off with a little bit of olive oil. So we've got about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in there. We're going to go with our onions. Now, you know what? There's recipes that call for a specific amount of ingredients. I really love onions, especially in a dish like this. So I'm going to put a bit more than you probably would need. And I actually would advise you to do that also. So, a soup spoon of garlic. We're going to throw in a pinch of sea salt. A pinch to me is about an espresso spoon, so half a teaspoon. I like chilies, give it a bit of kick. It's not going to be hot, but it will give it a little kick, just enough. So parsley does 2 things. It adds freshness both in taste and visually. You look at that nice, fresh, vibrant green, and you think fresh. And it also adds a fresh, it's not an earthy flavor like the bay leaves that we used in the risotto, but it is a fresh herb flavor that will definitely enhance. So now we've got the onions and the garlic again browning, and now we're going to deglaze it and stop it from frying by adding wine. I'm going to add a bit more wine to this. I'm probably adding half a cup of wine now. We're looking at about 3 ounces of wine. So now the wine is reduced a little bit because you don't want it to taste like a glass of wine. And we're going to add the mussels in. Secret to cooking mussels: cover the pan, walk away. It's going to take you about, depending on the size of the mussels, anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, and depending on your stove. So put your stove on max, let it come to what you consider a boil, so you can see it really sizzling and bubbling. Throw your mussels in, cover it. Now those 3 to 5 minutes are enough to cook them, and the way you'll know is when you pull off the lid, okay, they will be open. Once they're open, it's up to you if you want them overcooked or not. So the mussels now are opening. Turn the stove off now. Leave it for another minute. Let the steam just finish it off without overcooking it. And you know what? You've got this beautiful mussel that smells and is going to taste amazing. Just put them back in the bowl where you took them out from, without obviously spilling them all over the counter. You want a nice, healthy looking, plump mussel like that. So when you pull it out, see, it still has a little bit of bounce to it. Amazing. Okay, so now that we've eaten our appetizer, because you want to eat those mussels as soon as you finish cooking them. We've got the rice, we've taken it out of the fridge. Take the bay leaves out, we grab our stock. So we've got 2 cups of stock here. So I started off with 1 cup of rice, and now we got 2 cups of stock. Okay, pan's already a little bit hot. We take our rice. So you wait for the stock to get hot, which it should be already, considering the pan was so hot. And now you're going to put the rice inside the stock. So now this is a lot easier. This is almost foolproof. You're not going to make a bad risotto now. The hard part was getting it to this point. From here on, it's just measuring the quantity of liquid you add to it, really. You still do want to toss it around and make sure it doesn't stick, especially after when you add the cheese and butter in that, it becomes really rich. So this lobster stock is 100% natural. We roast lobster shells. We add your typical stock vegetables, which is carrots, celery, onions. We add garlic. We add tomatoes, some herbs. We add some basil. We add some parsley. Again, some bay leaves. So it's more than just a stock now. It's become a broth because we have incorporated a lot more flavor into it. We've got our rice going. I'm going to start the fish, and we're going to time this so that your fish is done at the exact same time as your rice. Risotto becomes problematic if you let it sit for too long. So what we're going to do now is I'm heating up a skillet here. It's a non-stick pan. Add a bit of oil. You can use just a vegetable oil or whatever oil you prefer. You don't need very much. You're not frying it. You're doing what we call searing it. Keep your eye on the risotto. That skin that you have in the sable fish, which you definitely should eat. Sable fish has a beautiful skin. So you're going to take it. First, we're going to add a little bit of salt. You don't need to add flavor to this. This is a beautiful tasting fish. So you take the skin, you put it down. This is already very hot. Put it down. Hold it down. You can hold it down with a fork or a spoon if you're afraid of getting burned, which you should be. You hold it down so that, because when the skin shrinks, it curls up the fish. So when you're holding it down, you're keeping it flat. So you get the crisp through the whole skin and not just on the edges. That's as much as it's going to shrink. Meanwhile, don't forget about your rice. If you find it hard to do these two things simultaneously, you know what? Take the rice off the heat. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody's going to criticize you. You're not being judged. Take it off the heat for a second. Start adding your other ingredients to it. So this is our lobster. We've got about 4 ounces of lobster meat here. What I've done was I've just taken apart from a live lobster. You toss it in there. Lobster cooks very fast. So we're going to put it back on the stove now. Give it a toss. It takes practice, but definitely this is the best way to get risotto to be involving all the ingredients. Butter obviously makes everything taste better, right? So you add the butter to your risotto, and now you've really got to involve it in there. Okay? Toss it, mix it, feed it. This is where your risotto is going to change from a rice to a risotto. I'm going to turn this off now because we got crispiness on both sides. Now, normally you can just grab this pan, put it in the oven while you're finishing the rice. The oven is at medium temperature or even 300 degrees, and you just let it sit in there. Like I said, this fish will not overcook unless I leave it in this pan and burn it. Because of the fattiness, it will actually make it taste better. You don't want this fish undercooked. You want tuna rare or raw, but you don't want this undercooked. Trust me, this fish should be well done. So you put it in the oven, or what I like to do is just cover it up, and now it's almost going to steam it. It will not leave the skin crispy like it should be. If you want it to maintain crispy, put it in the oven, leave it in there while you're finishing your risotto. So now we've got, the butter is pretty much melted. So in this step, besides cheese, the cheese is that secret ingredient that finishes it. I also add a bit of green onions for the freshness and the crunchiness of it, because the amount of time it's going to be left in there is not enough to really cook it too much. So you're still going to get a little bit of that fresh crunch. I add tomatoes because there is tomato in the stock, so it just complements the stock. So if we mix it a bit, I'm going to use the spatula once again. Very important, use wood or plastic. This will help the rice from not sticking, not breaking, and you can scrape it out of the bottom of the pan without breaking it. If you use a metal spoon, chances are you're going to keep breaking those grains, and it's never going to be as good as you intend it to be. Okay, so our rice is pretty much ready. This is a consistency that most restaurants will serve you, most chefs will make. So you've got a nice consistency to this rice. It's not paste, it's still very loose, but it's very creamy and rich. Okay, so we want to eat this right away. We're not going to leave it sitting on the stove and getting hard. So we're going to plate it, then we're going to eat it. The fish is done. I'm going to turn it over and show you the... Okay, the sable becomes delicate once it's cooked. It flakes apart and it will fall apart. Another reason why skin on this fish is very appropriate to keep it together. So if you can see, the skin is very thin. Use this, turn it over, and you've got a nice golden colored fish on this side. It's perfectly cooked, flaking. Now, if I want to get some crisp on that skin after this, I'll just turn on high heat, plate the rice, so I'm only going to plate this for myself, so I'm obviously not going to eat everything. But in your case, family or two people. So now my skin has become a bit more crispy now. Again, this saves you from turning the oven on. If you just want to cook on the stove, cook it fast. So you can see how flaky it is. It's actually coming apart. So, fish with skin, skin up. 2 reasons. It will stay crispier, and also if you don't like skin, you can just peel it right off. You grab yourself a knife or a fork or even your hand, and you can just peel it right off. Okay? So now you don't have to eat it if you don't care for it. And this is lobster risotto with seared sable fish. Thank you for joining me in my kitchen, and thank you for letting me into your kitchen. I hope that this meal works out for you and turns out as good as it should, because definitely this is one of the best things that you can eat without much fuss. If you have any comments or you want to tell me how good it turned out, or even you need to ask me something, you know what, just Instagram, Facebook is at Sabor, and I'll always take the time to appreciate anything you have to say. Thank you again.